Otherwise, otherwise we can ad-lib.
There we go. We should be good to go.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, we're good to go. I can see that.
Excellent.
So are we're out, this is going out on a Facebook feed and stuff like that?
Yeah, you're live on Facebook. You're live on YouTube. We've got over 150 people tuned in at the moment.
Good.
How exciting. Good evening, everybody. Nice to connect with you. And thank you for making this hour available with us. Obviously, it's a fantastic platform that Josh and his support has put on, and hopefully will raise a hell of a lot of money for the NHS and the associated charities, and give a hell of a lot of value. You know, we're aware with the kind of closing act, so we'll make sure it's more the headline act than the graveyard shift. And if you guys have got any questions, any queries, anything, then either ask it as we go through, or just ping us an email.
Yeah, that's it. So to begin with, first of all, well done to everyone who's donated so far. I know Josh and Alice were looking at raising a fair few quid, and they've smashed that. I think that just those guys sitting in that office and doing this for 3 days straight is a damn good effort. And anyone who hasn't donated yet really, really should. It's amazing. There's been so much raised so far. All the guys who have watched and tuned in and spent your weekend. I don't even know if a weekend is a real thing anymore, but for those of you who have spent your weekend watching this, well done, and well done for those who have donated. So the presentation that we're about to go through is an extract from a workshop that we're putting on at the moment. Putting these on once or twice a week, and as you'll see on the screen, it's entitled How to Build a Recession-Ready Property Portfolio. So we hear the word recession quite a lot, even more so at the moment. I know there's lots of people who are very ambivalent about it, don't really care, and are buying everything anyway. Lots of people who are scared, lots of people who are scaremongering. And this presentation will just give you some insight really into what we're doing about it. If any of you do want to talk about getting onto one of our presentations, if you drop us an email, we'll give you an email to send it to in just a moment. And if you have any questions or anything after this presentation, feel free to give us a shout. So to begin with, before we jump in, a quick intro to us. So both Dan and I are co-owners of Jive Group. We have a number of interests, but in the way that we're talking to you today, we'll talk about Jive Property. So myself, I have a 10 to 12 year career of being a full-time investor, either in property or other asset classes. And over the last 3 years or so, have been focusing fully on Jive Property. We sit up mostly in the northeast of England. That's Sunderland, Durham, Newcastle, and Teesside as well, where I live. And the majority of our time and majority of the team's time in Jive Property Limited is spent building property portfolios, probably for some of you guys, some of the 200 odd people that are listening now, and building buy-to-let portfolios. And this presentation will go on to tell you a bit about how we're changing that. And I'm sure Dan can introduce himself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me. So I've been in property for about 15 years or so now. Started in the northeast and got different interests around the country. I haven't always had property as my full-time career. I actually had a proper job along the way. I was a strategist of all things. So I was paid a lot of money, or maybe not enough money. I was paid a lot of times to develop business strategies, primarily for products to be disruptive in new industries. And those skills transfer nicely over to property, because you'll hear the word strategy bandied about quite a lot, and sometimes in the right context, sometimes in the wrong context, but nevertheless, strategy is very, very important in property. So it was the obvious kind of choice as a way to both build wealth and use the skill set that I'd built up. So as I say, about 15 years now in property, mainly buy-to-let. Business strategist in terms of my history, and generally been an entrepreneur for a number of years. And as Will said, we've got a number of businesses that kind of align with each other, and that's pretty much my background. And we've kind of worked with a lot of cool people along the way to do a lot of cool stuff, and perhaps some of you guys that are listening. So that's me.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers for that. So lots of you know us already, so we'll go on. We'll dive straight in. So these workshops that we're running, and this extract from one of those workshops, highlight the adaptations that we're having to make to safely continue to invest in what can only be described as an unpredictable market and a volatile market at the moment. We'll go through 4 different things that we're doing, what we're working into our portfolio, what we're working into client portfolios. we'll explain why we're doing this and why you guys can too. So, a few things we'll ask of you guys. Make sure you ask lots of questions. If you've got any, put them in the chat. If at all we don't get the answer, we don't get the chance to answer all of the questions, drop us an email there, hello@jiveproperty.com, and I promise we will get back to each and every one of you if we don't. Also, make sure that you grab a pen and a piece of paper, the most modern of all the writing technology out there. Not everything that we talk about is going to resonate with you. Some of it you'll think is great, some of it you might not even agree with, and either one is absolutely fine. However, all that really matters, as you would have got from all these presentations over the last few days, is that there's probably one little nugget that's really going to work for you. There's going to be one little thing that ticks a light bulb in your head, gives you a new angle or a new idea. And if all that you get from this presentation is one tiny little thing that's going to help you, it's going to help you make money or help you save money or invest better, then make sure you've got your pen and paper ready for that. I'd say that's always the thing. So also, like we said, Josh and Alice have raised a good portion of money so far. Now, to make sure that we keep that money flowing in, what we've decided to do is give away 2 full portfolio building strategy sessions with Jive. Now, this is where our team sit down with a new investor or even an experienced investor that really wants just to rethink their strategy and rethink their plan. We'll get to know you, we'll get to know your budget, we'll get to know your risk tolerance, we'll get to know absolutely everything there is to know in order to put that into our business and spit out a sensible strategy and a lovely document for you to follow and build. Now, normally these would be at least £1,000 each. So what we've decided to do, I haven't told Dan this yet, so what we've decided to do is to give away 2 of these. So anyone who donates £20 or more from now, it's between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock tonight. We won't be talking for 2 hours, but we'll chuck an extra hour in case you watch this a bit later. Anyone who donates £20 or more in the next 2 hours, not only will we match that donation, but we'll also pick 2 people out of that list, and we will run them through a free strategy session.
Awesome. It's worth pointing out, not only is the strategy session good, just from the point of view of you're speaking to somebody about what you might want to do or where you might want to go with things, it gives you a really kind of unemotional look at the realities of what you're trying to do, what's possible, what's not possible. And again, it's only from our experience and that about our team and the specialists that we work with, but you will get a very comprehensive grilling and a very comprehensive document out of it. So it's not all one way. You need to be prepared to input as much information as you can share. And as I say, from the point of understanding where you are with regards to experience, resource, all of this kind of stuff, from that, we can get our full team to put together a really, really good document, effectively a blueprint, should you choose to follow it. And for a lot of people, that is absolutely enough. And particularly in a time like now, I mean, we've even got a strategy document, and that's simply because until you write it down, you don't have a plan, you just have a dream. So as Will said, we're going to give away 2 of those. This says we'll donate £10 for each person who donates now. So what is it we're doing? Matching donations or?
Yeah, up to £20. Yeah, I've had a glass of wine now, so I thought we'd double it. Seeing as it's Sunday.
So yeah, 2 of those, and of course anybody that donates from now onwards is into the draw. So what do they have to do? Just send a screenshot to this email or something?
Yeah, that's it. Take a screenshot of the donation. Either send it to Josh or send it to hello@jiveproperty.com with your details on it. We'll get back to you. We'll pick a winner. Well, tomorrow, probably Monday. Yeah, by the close of play tomorrow, we'll pick a winner and we'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Cool. Happy days. So without any further ado, we'll crack on with the presentation, and we will hopefully give you guys lots of good, useful, free value to tuck into. So now, the whole world that we live in and our race is just built on change, it's built on adaptation, it's built on growth, and it's built on evolution, if you subscribe to that theory. So deep down in the core of our species is the need and the ability to assess new circumstances, to evolve based on those circumstances, and to try and thrive within them. Obviously, we've got a choice. We can adapt to these circumstances and thrive and win, or we can not adapt and die, basically. Now, obviously, that sounds a touch dramatic in terms of a property portfolio, but really, I don't think it's any different. We're faced with changing circumstances all the time. And in an investment portfolio, we must make financial decisions that will affect our future based on these circumstances. I think it's really important, first of all, to understand the fundamentals, why we'd build a property portfolio. I think you should build a portfolio based on assets that you'll be happy to hold on to forever and ever and ever. But when things change, be prepared to tweak the plan, be prepared to adapt, and make decisions to adapt when new circumstances arrive. I think that's just as important as making a plan in the first place.
And obviously the reason for having those assets in the first place is to give you security, is to give you safety, is to give you excuse me, coronavirus, is to give you that peace of mind. You know, in a time like this, obviously at the minute the government have pumped in billions of pounds in stimulus and other types of measures to try and give people the best support they can, but we're not always going to be so lucky, and depending on how long this goes on, the support is not going to last forever. So to have nice strong cash flow, to have assets that have cash within them, puts you in a much stronger position than many people. And you know, it is such a safety net. Honestly, I can't explain how much anxiety it probably saves. You know, we speak to people on the daily basis, and we're not, you know, naive enough to think people aren't struggling. They really are. You know, all the people that want to build a portfolio today, that is great, you know, because it's really important. But I bet they are wishing that they started 2 years ago, 4 years ago. You know, but the second best time to start is now, and you know, these circumstances prove that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what you said about what the government have done and the stimulus that they've put into the economy, I think it's fair to say they've really pulled a rabbit out of their hat. I think they've done a great job, really. Yeah,
for sure. And those, so there are those people that are kind of taking the handouts, and they're like, okay, so what's next? Waiting for legislation to come out to say, right, it's all safe and we can go back to normal and that. Now, excuse me, most investors are pretty savvy people. They're able to read a situation and realize that the situation is not going to be something that can just be legislated back to normality. So those investors are starting to put irons in fires. They're starting to get to a point of liquidity. They're starting to reduce their overheads and streamline the things they're doing to make themselves more in control of the things they can control, rather than just seeing this as a bit of a lull or a bit of a holiday or a bit of a time off. And it's those people that will really thrive in the new world, if you like. You know, not trying to be harbingers of doom. We're just trying to be realists, and the people that do better are the ones that are able to read, you know, read the future, if you like, but read the trends as they start to unfold.
Yeah, that's it. Now, I think the true cost of all of this stuff at the moment, we know there'll be a cost. We know that there'll be an impact based upon the amount of money that's now flowing around the world. But the fact is, we're in a completely different place to where we were in 2007, 2008. I think what we're going through now is as much as anything a good trigger point for a recession. But back 10, 12 years ago, there was a liquidity crisis. There was mortgage defaults. There was banks calling in loans. People stopped spending money, and the world basically ground to a halt. And where we are now, there's more money flowing around than ever before. It's crazy. So different.
Yeah, very strange times, but that doesn't change the fact that we can very quickly find that, you know, lending will stop and things won't be available, or if you can't prove experience, then your only option is to go in with somebody that's experienced. Those who are on the periphery are the ones that are going to get squeezed out. Those that are just about staying afloat are the ones that are going to get broken. Those that refuse to change are the ones that are literally going to get washed up on the beach. But you know, for every time there's a negative in one of these situations, there's also a number of positives. And you know, hopefully through having this chat tonight, you can kind of see some of those opportunities to stabilize your position.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we're not economists. We can't predict the exact outcome of this, but what we will notice is that there'll absolutely be some change. So the question we've been asking ourselves really is that why does it matter to us? Why does it matter to us as property people at all? Why do we really care? You know, now deep down, I believe firmly that property is one of, if not the best asset class for long-term gradual investment into. I think it's one of the best wealth builders and income generators out there if you do it right. So for my career, I spent the first 10 years of it investing in other asset classes. And since moving over to property, I just wish I was a long proportion of those earlier 10 years probably doing this before now, really. Property wise, the bottom line is that we invest, personally anyway, we invest on a pretty small island called the UK. That island has a ever-growing population. So just from a common sense point of view, if there's more homes needed and there's a finite amount of land on which to build those homes, then demand outstrips supply and prices can only go one way over the longer term. Obviously, property, it's by no means easy. It's by no means guaranteed. It has many, many pitfalls, for sure. We see lots of those all the time. And if you don't build a balanced portfolio, it can be easy to get it wrong. We'll see from the slide at the moment, the last two of the housing crisis before, both in 1990, saw the housing crash, and in the 2008 recession, we'll just see how many, the spike in repossessions over those time. We saw a dramatic increase in the number of properties being repossessed over the time. Obviously, that creates a problem for you if you're being repossessed, right? If the bank has to repossess your property, you're probably not doing something right in the first place. You're not keeping up with your mortgage payments. Obviously, it will impact your credit file. But what it also does, and why this is important for us now, if we look at this in advance of this happening, is it creates a lot of opportunity. Now, not in a vulturistic point, but the point is that a lot of repossessions means that the banks will be offloading stock at cheap prices to get them off their books and turning them back to liquidity. And also at the same time, there'll be people who are in a situation that they need to offload housing stock, whether that's landlords or whether that's homeowners, and we can help them, but also do well out of the situation by helping them and taking their property off their hands and buying it at a suitable price for us, but making sure they don't be repossessed. And I think that's one of the many things that a market downturn that we're probably going to see is going to bring ahead of us. You know, lots of cheap property becoming available. It helps us as investors, and it helps us make much more money over the longer term. Now, if your portfolio, if you were one of the statistics that was on this chart and your portfolio was bought at the same time, all in the same town, it was heavily leveraged at a high loan to value, then you're going to be one of those people that's going to be at risk. Like Dan said a moment ago, there are some people at the moment, some categories of investors who are going to be at risk. Those people who are too highly geared, or those people who are just really close to the edge of being too highly geared or not quite there. Those are the people that are going to be bitten there. So our job both for ourselves and our job for our clients is to make sure that we don't become statistics on this chart.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth pointing out that, you know, whilst property, in my mind, is the best and strongest asset class, and you know, a lot of things will back that up. It is not an easy game, and it comes with massive risk, and it's not always going to be, you know, peaches and cream or whatever. It's not always going to be a walk in the park. And unfortunately, because marketing and other things happens, you know, you kind of see a lot of things across the internet that makes it sound like it's absolutely a piece of piss and nothing's ever going to go wrong and all this kind of stuff. So you do need kind of grit in your belly and a big set of balls, if you like, proverbially speaking, to get into property. But that said, it is something that will give you massive security, and it is something that can be worked out. You can literally sit down, work out your facts and figures. You can put in numbers to allow for risk tolerance. You know, you can look at the kind of areas you're in. You can look at the kind of returns, the kinds of tenants, and all this kind of stuff. So just because it can go horribly wrong and it can also go horribly right, it doesn't mean that you need to panic, or it doesn't mean that you need to think it's really easy. All of these things can be factored in. What you need to be, and I'm kind of explaining this really badly, is a realist. It's really important that you're a realist. So when things go good, you need to appreciate it, that is good. You're getting a real benefit from the things you're doing. And when things are difficult, you need to understand that that is also part of this kind of roller coaster that's called property. But on the whole, it can be really lucrative, and it can be an amazing thing for your family, lifelong and generations thereafter.
Yeah, it really can. It really can. I think it's important to remember that. Like we're not here, as Dan called it, being harbingers of doom. We're here, and we're about to explain on the next slide exactly what we're doing to carry on, the changes that we're making to carry on making money. Because recession or no recession, issues or no issues, we still believe that 20, 30, 40 years from now, we're still going to be investing in property and still making money. So this is right now where we were on client portfolios, more often than not, what we were focusing on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, and we're going to go into a bit of a deeper dive into each one of these in just a second, what we're doing now. So our focus has had to shift somewhat. Had to shift looking at what risks lie ahead of us and also what opportunities lie ahead of us. So we've designed a plan, a method, or a strategy, if you want to call it that we believe will allow us to successfully continue to build a property portfolio. So what we were doing before, there's absolutely nothing wrong with, by the way. It's not that different. So simple buy-to-lets. Simple buy-to-lets are one of the few things at the moment that I know we are over the moon that we still have, because these are one of the few things that regulation hasn't changed. The whole world hasn't ended. There haven't been reasons for people to stop turning up to buy-to-lets because they've probably lived there for a few months or a few years already. You know, these are like the old faithful. The difference is that we believe our criteria to hit the buy, refurbish, refinance model, our criteria has to change. What we were looking at before, our minimum criteria to purchase would be 15% or below or more below market value, be at least an 8% gross yield, and nice and easy, plenty of tenant demand. So this is absolutely still the cornerstone of a good property portfolio. There are, however, certain changes that have happened in the market at the moment that we think could make this normal, simple method a bit trickier. So the first one of these to change over the last 2 or 3 weeks was that loan to values dropped quickly and significantly in the lending market. It happened overnight.
Yeah,
it was literally overnight. It's crazy. So the method of buy, refurbish, refinance is completely predicated on buying cheap, adding value, and then remortgaging at typically 75% loan to value, so that you can release most of your cash back, hopefully ready to buy another property. So if the banks are lending less as a percentage of the total property value, then you either need to be buying at a deeper discount, which is not always that easy to do, or you need to be prepared to leave a bit more cash in your deals. Now, I certainly don't think that leaving a bit more cash in your deals at the moment is a bad thing at all. If you can afford to do that, if you've got the pot of cash and pot of capital to do that, then it will help you not to over leverage, and it will help you from becoming a statistic in the repo chart that we saw just a moment ago. You know? So for us, it's really, really important that we make the most of this. And we have changed certain things because we think that property prices could, as everyone else has said, property prices could drop. And it's possible at some point, you know, someone else said earlier on today that property doesn't always go up, and they're absolutely right. I think it was on Simon Zuch's presentation. He was comparing residential property to commercial property, and nothing ever goes up forever, does it? You know, it just can't. So the same point as above is that if property prices fall at the wrong time and you've bought your property and you've expected to refinance it back out, and if the value goes down, the bottom line is, like it or not, you're probably not going to be able to recycle your capital.
Yeah, and in fact, there's still a lot of people locked into deals they did, around the 2008 time. That only now that house is getting close to the value it was held at the time. So it can be a scary ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, who knows what will happen in this downturn? But even in the meantime, again, we're going to see down valuations on properties. I know we've seen in the last few weeks properties get valued more than we thought we would. Somehow we've seen properties get valued at less than we thought they would somehow. And if you can't predict it, it's hard.
Well, this is it. I mean, the only thing we can say with any degree of certainty about this market is it's volatile. I mean, it literally is like that at the moment. You know how a lender is reacting on a particular day, or kind of valuations that are coming back, or every single thing in the chain is volatile. It's the only way to explain it. So the more risk aware you are, and the more you understand your fundamentals, your bottom line, the things that Will is pointing out here on your kind of buy-to-let portfolio on steroids, if you like, it gives you kind of stabilizers through tough times, then it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the bottom line is that simple buy-to-lets work. There's going to have to be a real fundamental difference in the world for buy-to-lets not to work, and we still think they're the right cornerstone of a portfolio. But on the right-hand side, you'll see there's 4 changes we're making to our normal criteria just to make sure that we can keep making money during this time. First of those is bigger discounts. We want to be buying properties with bigger discounts. That discount to market value is kind of a bit subjective. What we care about is what we think is going to get valued at the end. The discount to today's market value is completely irrelevant. We just want to know to some degree of certainty, which is quite tough at the moment, what we think that property will be valued at. So we feel a lot more comfortable if we're getting it 10% cheaper than we would have been happy with 2 months ago. Then we think we've got enough room for error, really.
It's that old adage again, isn't it? You know, you locking in the value when you buy, and you know, now more than ever, that is massively important.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things we've done for a long time anyway, is focus on social housing on 2 levels that we'll go into in a moment, whether that's local housing authority tenants, which is just nice, pretty predictable income most of the time anyway, and also social housing on long-term rental contracts. We've had a big switch and focus onto picking up purchase lease options recently, and we'll go into a bit of a deeper dive on that in just a second as well. And also, as prices fall and opportunities come up for quick sales, there's going to be chances to pick up properties that would be suitable for flips, that would be suitable to selling on and making money as well. So, hey, if there's a chance to make some capital growth as well as income, then we're all for that too.
Definitely.
So, this for us is how to invest in today's property market. So we have seen a steady rise in property prices over the last 10 years in most areas, probably arguably not the northeast of the country, but in most areas we have. As we said a moment ago, banks have reduced loan to values. What we found straight away was with the loan to value drops from our brokers was that most dropped by 10% pretty much overnight. Either they pulled themselves out of the market completely, or they just dropped by 10%. So if they were happy to lend at 75% loan to value, it's probably going to be 65% now. If they were loaning at 65% loan to value, it's probably going to be 55% and so on. Although this seems to change every single day, the lending landscape. People come in, people come out, and I think it's going to change. So we can't kind of say for any certainty exactly how that will be. What's for sure though, the only thing that's sure is uncertainty. Valuers at the moment are faced with uncertainty, and that means typically that they're being more conservative on their figures. One of the interesting things that's going to come out of this whole period and this time is how we even value properties. There's some out there that are happy to sign off on automated valuations. There are some that aren't, but where does that leave you? If you spend 20 grand on a house and completely revamp the inside and put a new bedroom in the loft like we just did, how does this automated valuation know that? Where do we go? And hopefully, for me, I would hope that will improve over the next few months, because that would be a good addition, I think.
One thing we're definitely going to see is the use of technology in, with the valuers and all this kind of stuff, because those that really adapt and get to a stage where they're very comfortable with the valuations, they're going to get more clients. They're going to be able to do better, stronger valuations, and they're going to absolutely dominate the market. So the same way that those companies are adapting, and there are going to be some people, that rise to the top, some big players that aren't just trying to do the old models and the old methods. Some big players are going to rise to the top, and in the same way, it's an opportunity for us as investors to realize that landscape is changing and to position ourselves so that we can plug nicely into that. So this is again about understanding where the weaknesses are and understanding where the opportunities are. So as Will says, volatile valuations, but that won't always be the case. As this becomes the new norm, there are going to be some companies that kind of creep out, and it's going to be a very strong idea to start working with those companies, because that will put you ahead as the whole investment landscape starts to change. The fundamentals are always going to be there, but a lot of it is going to be more and more tech driven. We've already seen that in some kind of research and development projects. I'm sure you guys have in prop tech and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to watch out.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting time. Things will change for sure. So for us, although things are going to change, this is what we have to do right now to keep investing in buy-to-lets and keep making money. So first thing for us is we would suggest you be prepared to leave a bit more cash in the deal than you would have before. So if your portfolio was planned on buy, refurbish, refinance, right now we'd suggest leaving a bit more in than you would have, or being prepared to anyway. So for us, we were looking at a property in the northeast of England. We might have been prepared to leave 10 grand in it before. Now we'll be happy to leave 20 grand in it. And it's just important to do that. At least we won't be over leveraged. Yeah.
It's worth pointing out as well that you know, not everybody will necessarily have the money to do that, but all this is going to do, you know, if you're reliant on that cash every time, all this is going to do is slow down your investment journey. But I would rather be slow and steady than going fast and dangerous. So it's the was it the hare and the tortoise thing?
Yeah, that's it.
It's exactly the right thing to do, and nobody wants to leave more cash in than they absolutely have to. But if you don't, it's reckless at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. You know, and even right now, you could go onto a shorter term product with maybe potentially a more expensive mortgage product when you buy your property, but one that you can get out of in a couple of years, rather than having a redemption penalty for the first 4 years. Have something that you can get out after 2 years without a redemption penalty. And like, what's 2 years really? It's nothing, is it? So
you say that 2 years after lockdown.
Yeah, true. I suppose, yeah. 2 weeks feels like a long time at the moment, let alone 2 years. We're on the hunt for bigger discounts. We're looking now for 20 to 30% to end market value. We don't really buy into below market value today, because what is it? Market value probably is what you pay. Like it or not, that's my view. I think that the market value when you buy it is irrelevant. What we're interested in is the market value following any improvements, following any refurbishment, following any extension. We want to know what it's going to be worth by the time we're done with it.
It's worth pointing out that just because we want to buy with deeper discounts doesn't mean they're available yet. So whilst people are a bit nervous and things are changing and stuff, it doesn't mean at the moment that there is yet a bigger stock. So sometimes these are harder to find. And what I would always say is that if your offer is accepted on the first offer, there's usually this kind of feeling of, oh shit, I didn't go deep enough.
Yeah.
And you know, you really should expect your offers to be turned down a couple of times. Do them politely, work out the maths correctly, but you know, using kind of the percentages will give there as a guideline. But we are having our first offers turned down. Of course, then revisit them next week and the week after, and maybe a month after. You know, build up a nice little pipeline of properties that you are making offers on, and expect to be turned down on most of them. Just because your criteria as an investor has to change to reduce your risk does not mean that the properties as yet are available, or that everybody's going, oh, you've got cash, have it. It doesn't matter. You know, there are a lot of cash-rich investors, and you'll certainly see that when the recession kicks in. You know, when we do go to a formal recession, you will see that when you go to an estate agent, there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 other people bidding on that for cash. So it's about being persistent. It's a numbers game. You know, if you put in 100 offers, you've been turned down 100 times, then you are 100 offers closer to getting that one accepted. And you only need to get one accepted that is really, really good, and that is a serious chunk of change and ongoing security.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not the whole property market hasn't adjusted to us wanting to buy stuff cheaper yet, unfortunately. But one day it will, soon. We're always based up in the northeast, focusing on areas that have strong yield. Cash flow at the moment, as Dan pointed out earlier, is so important. You know, if you've got 50 properties and they're paying you a few hundred quid a month each, you're not being able to get to work becomes much less important at the moment than if you've got nothing and you can't pay your bills. So for us, high yielding tenanted investment properties are always an excellent way to do this. There's absolutely a balance between the total yield you can get and asset quality. So just because it has a yield of 25%, it doesn't mean it's a good asset. It doesn't mean it will rent. It doesn't mean it will be sellable in the future. It doesn't mean it has any underlying value. So just balance that out. And I think even more at the moment, it's probably worth considering that, because as we fall into what can be seen as probably riskier times, it's probably a balance between that. And for us right now, something that produces a 7 to 8% gross yield up in the part of the country that we buy buy-to-lets, and it's going to be worth it. Probably going to be priced somewhere between 60 grand and 100 grand up in the northeast of England. A property that has a yield like that. And that does a few things. Lots of people will much prefer buy-to-lets that are 5 or 6 times the price of this. But I know that I'd rather 5 or 6 properties at 60 to 100 grand than one property rented out at 5 or 6 times the price, because frankly, the risk of the tenant paying is just not too high. If I have a property that's worth 100 grand and I've got a 75% loan to value mortgage on it, typical interest rate about 3.5%, that means that my mortgage cost is £218 a month. And I know if a tenant stops paying in one of the houses and I have to find 200 quid a month, they're probably going to be all right. And it's not going to matter too much because there's going to be 4 or 5 other houses that are still chucking out profit every single month to cover that. The difference is if you've got one property at a much, much higher value and a much lower yield, then the risk of someone not paying, and right now we're in a time where the risk of people not paying is high, then the risk of people not paying and the effect it has on you is significantly different.
And the interesting thing is, whilst these are unprecedented times, they are also times, these are really, really happening. So I think, there was, somebody said it was only 50 or 60% of people actually paid rent last month or something. Now, that is a really, really scary statistic, particularly given that a lot of those were working professionals. And so that, you kind of think you're safe because you're catering to the working professionals market. And this kind of proves, in this instance, you can also be at risk. So it is wise to kind of think about your exposure, as Will's saying there.
Yeah, absolutely. Another point there is just don't go crazy and over leverage. I know lots of people who are probably new and wanting to jump into bridge to let products and high loan to value stuff straight away. Subject to your own risk profile, it's probably not the time to do that at the moment. Stick to something that's not too highly leveraged, not too highly geared, and just be a bit sensible. I think anywhere over 75% at the moment is probably not the right place to be.
Yeah, I mean, as a rule of thumb, the lower loan to value that you can take, that you can handle, that you can deal with, the better.
Yeah, that's it. And particularly when we come out of this, you guys who are portfolio landlords, which most of you working with us are, even if you didn't start like that, or if you're planning to be, most of the lenders are going to want to look at your whole portfolio. They're going to be more interested in your overall position now, and they're going to view your overall portfolio. And if your portfolio is geared to 75, 80, 85%, it's highly likely that it's going to be a lot harder, or at least a lot more expensive for you to get lending. So keep that in mind. I'd say 75% should probably be the top, even less than that at the moment.
Yeah.
Go on, Dan. Sorry, mate.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, obviously cash flow is king, and that how do you keep the money coming in, particularly even in buy to lets when professional people are not paying and things like that. So what are your options? I mean, I think we're going to talk now through maybe social housing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we are in just a second. Obviously, choose the right place as well. You need to put your house in the right place. You need to make sure it's got good tenant demand. It's got good amenities, really simple stuff. But at the moment, right now, as we said before, cash flow is king. So make sure there's actually going to be someone that wants to live in the house. It's going to pay your rent in the first place. So it's just to recap on those. Be prepared to leave a bit of cash in. Try and secure bigger discounts than you were before. Focus on yields of 7 to 8%, and keep the loan to value below 75% if you can. So moving on to social housing. It's worth noting right now, we're going to explain social housing in a slightly different example in a moment. And I know Sue Sims went into a much deeper dive on this, so we'll be quite brief. On our full presentation that we give to people, we go into a much deeper dive. So this is just a snippet really. But it's worth noting right now that social housing you could view as local housing authority tenants, or those receiving housing benefits, or universal credit, kind of falls into a similar profile. Right now, they're some of the most reliable sources of rent. But believe it or not, there have been some people on housing benefit asking for a rental holiday somehow because they haven't been able to work, but who knows? But these, more often than not, have got a guaranteed source of income. The government's paying for it, we're paying for it. And although lots of people probably 6 months ago would have been unhappy to have these type of tenants in the house, for us, they're a pretty good source of reliable money moving forward. So here, however, we use the term social housing to describe offering on normal buy-to-let properties to housing associations or registered providers of social housing. So normally, in this context, the company or the provider will take the property on a long-term lease, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, sometimes longer than that. They'll be responsible for the rent, paying rent to you. They'll be responsible for the maintenance. They'll be responsible for the tenant care, and they'll make sure that you don't have to worry about any of the issues that would come with renting property to a normal buy-to-let tenant. Typically, more often than not, these companies will house vulnerable tenants. The big ones that do it could be asylum seekers, victims of domestic abuse, recently released prisoners, and so on. But this allows you to have two things. It allows you to help those vulnerable tenants, but it allows you to help those vulnerable tenants without the stress of having to physically help those vulnerable tenants personally. So the strategy itself can reduce your cost as well, I suppose, because if you're not paying a managing agent every month, if you're not paying a tenant find fee, then there are absolutely no management fees to pay. So it really is one of those things that you can have as long term. You can put it down, you can set and forget. It's as close to guaranteed rent as you're ever going to get. I know there are lots of people touting guaranteed rent these days, but this is about as close to guaranteed rent as you can get, and it also helps those people in need as well. So it's not, although it sounds great, it's not perfect on the face of it. There are some cons to it as well. So it is absolutely harder to mortgage these properties. There are one or two companies that are happy to mortgage properties that are rented on long-term social housing contracts, but there aren't that many. And one of the reasons is that if that mortgage company was to have to repossess your block of flats, it had say you had a block of 30 flats that was housing vulnerable tenants of any size, shape or description, that mortgage company had to repossess your block of flats. The news and the press involved with them repossessing and then vacating those vulnerable tenants out of that block of flats, most mortgage companies say, actually, I'm not quite happy with that. So they are absolutely harder to mortgage. There is one company or one or two companies that are happy to. One of them isn't actually lending at the moment, so it's even harder than it should be right now. But when you can get a lending on them, they're really, really good. You can't do every property. That's worth considering as well. It's not a case of just buying a house and pinging it over to Mr. Social Housing and say, take this property. There are criteria, there are standards of finish that you need. And as you probably would have seen on Sim's presentation earlier on this weekend, there's certain things that you need to do it. And what we found doing this, speaking to private investors that have done it or doing it on a reasonable scale as a company, is it's harder to crack on your own than it is as a company, because frankly, it takes a bit of legwork to get set up. If you go direct to the council and you need the local council to really sign off and back the tenants that you've got on your property, it's going to be really hard for you to crack on your own for one or two buy-to-lets. There's a lot of work, a lot of legwork and a lot of hassle that goes into it. Whereas if we go and do it, for example, or a company goes and does it and says, every month we can deliver you 10 to 20 properties that meet this criteria, it's a lot easier to crack. So that's definitely worth considering that. Although it sounds great, on your own, it can be harder than you'd hope it to be. Now, we're going to move on to our next point that we're moving on. We have got to breeze through it quite quickly at the moment, so I'm sorry that we can't go into a lot of detail. We'd love to. We're going to move on now to purchase lease options. So a purchase lease option is best described as leasing a property for a fixed period of time, say 5 years, 10 years, with the option to purchase that property during that period at a pre-agreed price. Effectively, what you do is you take over the running of that property for the landlord, or you become the mortgage surrogate, if you will. You take responsibility for looking after the property during the option period, and you'll also benefit from any rent that is received above and beyond the agreed service cost, monthly service cost of that option. So typically, you'll pay every month the mortgage payment and the insurance payment for the landlord as well. These are something that we've done for ourselves for a little while. Haven't normally passed them on to anyone else, because why would you? But in the current market conditions, what we've done is we've started marketing, and we'll be offering these out to our customers as well. So the list on the right hand side that you see is a number of reasons why someone might be suitable for a purchase lease option. So if you're looking at a property and it's in negative equity, might be suitable for a purchase lease option. If you're speaking to a tired landlord who wants a tax efficient portfolio exit on his property, it might be suitable for a purchase lease option. It is worth noting, I suppose, at the moment that as of, I think, the 6th of April or the 4th of April this year, I'm sure, Josh, you can probably correct me on this, bearing in mind what you do for a living, is that if you sell a property now, within 30 days of selling that property, you have to, number one, file your capital gains tax return for that property, and you also have to pay any capital gains tax as well. So that has to happen within 30 days. So you put yourself in the shoes of a tired landlord who's got 400 properties or even 40 properties. I'm pretty sure that over his 50 years of building a portfolio, he hasn't kept perfect records. In fact, his records are probably, as we've seen Dan, written down on bits of paper in a notebook, right? And
they're the best deals, they're the best landlords.
They are indeed. But imagine having to file your capital gains tax return in 30 days from that. So in that example, you could look at maybe buying one of the properties every year, taking them off, and taking them one by one. Someone who doesn't need the cash, we've worked with someone recently who just didn't want the cash at the moment, so we've taken their property on an option, and they're also relocating urgently, which made it work as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think obviously somebody went into quite a lot of detail on purchase lease options earlier on, but absolutely it's a fantastic strand to any strategy at the moment, because it offers a lot of flexibility for some added cash flow, added control of properties, and it's a lot, to some degree, a lot less hassle if that fit works for both, buyer and seller, or current landlord and the leasee, if you like. So it is a very, very strong tool when it's used correctly, which is obviously part of a bundle of measures that we're using at the moment.
It is, absolutely. I would suggest on this next slide, because we're really running a little bit over, is that you just take a picture of this if you want. This would be a typical example of a purchase lease option, one that would be suitable, be a negative equity. You'd have more owing on the mortgage than the value of the property, so we couldn't purchase it straight away. Ideally, we want 10 years or more on the mortgage remaining, so we can get some good period of cash flow out of that property. We want the monthly mortgage payment to be less than the monthly rent as it is here, and we want to be making kind of £200 plus. This one, unfortunately, has got £9,000 of upfront outlay, which they won't always, but that would include a refurb as well. So we'll have to be really brief on this because we are running quite close and it is Sunday night. So we'll move on to our next slide and we'll breeze through the last one or two pretty quickly. Dan, have you got anything to add on that, mate, before we squeeze through?
No, I do think it's really important you do take a screenshot of that, and we'll be very happy to go through any questions, anything like that. No, absolutely fine. Let's push on. You guys know how to find us. We're at Jive Poppy anyway on Instagram and all that kind of stuff, and we just love answering questions. And the more complicated they are, the more they get sent towards Will. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks, mate. And like we say, we've got some presentations coming up that are a real deep dive on this. So we're just literally scratching the surface at the moment. We've tried to squeeze as much as we can in an hour, which thought would be easy. It'd be tough. So one of the other things that we're doing at the moment and that we expect to see coming up is picking up flipped properties. In this context, it's used for buying and selling a property, hopefully at a profit. If you do flips and you do joint ventures in conjunction with actually building an income generating portfolio, effectively, you can just never run out of cash. Your portfolio will keep making you money every single month and keep giving you income, but you do a few flips or a few joint ventures every single year to make capital growth in your portfolio. You should have more and more money to continue to invest into those income generating assets as well. So in the current climate, there's definitely going to be properties that wouldn't fit our normal buy-to-let criteria coming up for sale that are absolute steals. And that's what we're going to be hunting out for. Good home buy locations in real nice places of the parts of the world that we live in. We're going to be looking to pick them up, flip them on nice and quickly, make sure the finish is right, make sure we're happy we can resell them. And we'll be looking really for 25% profit at least. When we look at a property and we analyze it, we want to make sure that we can see at least 25% profit on it before we move it on.
Yeah, and just because there's a potential recession or a crisis out there doesn't mean the buyers of good properties aren't there. I mean, people more than ever now will value a good quality home. So to make homes available is a big deal. Now you need to think about your finished product when you're doing a flip, not just get away with what you can. You need to kind of understand the buyer, go the extra mile a little bit, understand that whilst it's a strange time, there are going to be people that really want a house that just jumps out at them. So really, really nail the kind of market that's out there. It is still out there, but not everybody is going to be able to tap into it. So if you're knocking out shit flips, excuse the French, that will be on record forever. If you're knocking out poor quality properties, you are not going to be in as strong a position as somebody that's took a little bit more time, put a few extra little features in, put, I don't know, like a Nest central heating or a few spotlights or under cabinet lights or any of that kind of stuff. So you really, really need to not skimp. You could, of course, be sensible and put in a few basic features that gives it a nicer finish. But always look at the neighborhood, see how you can at least get as high as and maybe slightly better than other ones that are on the market. And you will be really successful. They can be harder to sell, but this is where you need to be proactive with your marketing as well. If you've made it to a particular demographic, a particular buyer, then you just need to be really proactive with your marketing. Don't just sit around and wait for the estate agents to list it and hope it does well. You know, if we relied on the estate agents to make us money, they would a lot of the times, but not all the time. If our cash is locked up in a project, you better believe we're marketing it.
Yeah, that's right. That's the thing, and that's something you've always been really hot on, actually, mate. Is running that point, because it's just, you just rely on other people to do it. It's not always going to work for you, is it? So be proactive and try and get what you want.
Yep, exactly that.
Yeah. So for flips, one of those things that we're going to be picking up, and one of the other things that we're going to be doing to look at growth with our clients already, is to look at joint ventures. So we do already work on some. There we go. We do already have some joint ventures with clients that we'll run through in just a moment. So if you're miles and miles and miles away from where you want to invest, or you just don't have the time, then a joint venture could be worth considering. It's really important that it's with someone that you know and that you trust. It's really important that you tie it up legally with a solicitor who's got experience with joint ventures. And it's really important that you understand exactly how the JV will work and have an agreed exit plan. So trust with the other parties is really important. The Russian proverb that I think Reagan tried to coin himself was trust but verify. And what we take by that is you should have a feedback loop. You know, you should have a reporting and accountability loop. If you're sitting down in southeast of England or in the Middle East and you've got a JV partner over in the north of England, having a good feedback loop is really, really important. You could achieve that by a monthly Zoom meeting or a face-to-face meeting, if that's ever going to be a real thing again. You could achieve that with an agreed spending plan. So like if you have a plan at the start, you could say that anything that doesn't quite fit the spending plan and is an amount over £100 or over £1,000 that needs to be spent, needs to be signed off by all the parties, something like that. You should have monthly or quarterly financial reporting, but also I think it's important that you shouldn't micromanage the other party. Like, this is not employing someone else to work for you in your business. This is partnering with someone else and trusting them and working together. So I think there's a balance there to be struck. Yeah,
and it's always the first one that's a bit difficult because nobody quite knows what to expect, and we've never done two joint ventures that have been the same. You know, some people are very cautious, some people are very chilled out and laid back, some people want to be in on every decision, and other people, you know, expect that, you know, we have a degree of expertise in doing what we do. So there really isn't one single fit. You just have to work out, does it fit, does it work, keep everything above board. I mean, we've done successful joint ventures that we would never do again because the relationship just didn't feel good. But and so all of those things have to come together. So it's really important you choose a good joint venture partner. And then we've done other ones that they like, let's go again. You know, it's like Vegas, isn't it? Because you know, it's good, and when it comes together and the end product's there, and you know, and then we've got a buyer and stuff like that. So it is good, but do your homework.
Yeah, that's it. It's really important that you do. It's really important that you do with anything, you know. Make sure you've done your homework, make sure you're happy, and make sure that you're comfortable with it. Make sure that it's not like you're not betting the farm as well, you know. Make sure that you don't, it's not going to kill you if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, because often things will take a little bit longer or not quite work out exactly how they were. So we do have, or I did have quite a lot more that we really, really would be very happy to go into, but we are actually going to wrap it up because it is getting to 9 o'clock. It's almost gone past 9 o'clock now. For you guys who haven't donated yet, I'm going to stop this share now as well. So for you guys who haven't donated yet, please do add to what Josh and Alice have done. They've absolutely smashed it over the last few days. Josh, I don't know how you aren't asleep, mate. You look all right somehow. I don't know if you've got some secret going on, but you look like you're doing quite well, mate.
It's the lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. You know, thank you very much for that, guy. I was insanely valuable. You know, people were loving that. We had quite a few donations come through as well.
Perfect.
What I'll do is all the donations, if are people sending them to you or to us? For proof of those.
if they send them to you, ping them over to us with their name and email and stuff.
Yeah.
If not, they send them straight to us. Ideally, straight to us, but whatever you want, as long as we find out and we raise as much cash as we can, and then whoever wins something cool as well. That's good.
Yeah, and we'll
spot on.
We'll obviously match all of those donations up to the tune of what, 20 quid a pop or something.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Just in case it goes into the thousands. And if it doesn't, we're going to keep talking.
Yeah, that's it. Hopefully, it'll be a very expensive Sunday night.
Good. Yeah, but there's so much more that we go into regularly, and we're just scratching the surface there. If you want any more information, reach out to Josh, reach out to us via our Instagram or email hello@jiveproperty.com. But the main thing here is Josh and his team have absolutely smashed it.
Yeah, what up, guys?
It's going to make so much difference to so many lives, and not only these people that are learning, but all those lives around the country, mate. So hats off to you for pulling this out of your backside in a couple of weeks. And if you don't do this every year, you're mental.
Yeah, that's it. I think it should be a good thing. Do you reckon an in-person event next year? But
that would be lovely, wouldn't it? That would be great. I mean, imagine a world where we could actually meet with people.
I imagine touch would be great. Good. All right, Josh. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, mate.
Perfect.
Wrap up.
I'll leave you guys to it. Cheers.
Guys. Well done.
Perfect. Well, that was the last of our speakers. It really has been a phenomenal event. I think 35, 36 hours of content. It's been a marathon, to say the least. So many great speakers, so many key takeaways we've taken away from this. But most importantly, so much money raised, and it is still increasing. So the guys from Jive, Dan and Will, they've said that they're actually going to keep matching their donations all the way up until 10 o'clock tonight. And you'll also get a chance to win one of their strategy days, which is worth well in excess of £1,000. So do keep donating, because it all counts. So if you put £20 in, they're actually going to match it for another 20 quid as well. So you're actually putting 40 quid in, plus you do win a chance of winning one of those days. It's been an honour. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Maybe see you next year. We don't know, but thank you very much, and peace out. Bye.